Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. As always, I'm Clark Coffey, and with me is Mr. Cullen McFader. What's up?
Hello. Nice to be back. It's been a little bit of a while since we last spoke.
It has. I mean, potentially unbeknownst to the listeners at home.
I think the episodes will come out consecutively, but yeah,
hopefully we're trying to be consistent with the releases, although we're not nailing that perfectly. But sometimes on the recording side, we might have a little bit more or a little bit less time. This is we're both feeling maybe a little bit rusty. Hopefully that won't be obvious, but it has been a while.
It's the first of the year, I think. It's the first
of the year, and I've been off in Seattle shooting or working on a feature film. And Cullen, you've been in post on yours, so we've both been busy, but we're excited to be back. And today, we're going to discuss my pick, 1987's 3 O'Clock High, a film that I've loved ever since childhood. I probably saw this film, maybe 89, 90, something around there when it came out on cable TV. Cullen, is the first time that you've ever seen the film, so I'm always excited when we have a setup like this, because I'm always interested to get a modern person, like it's like a contemporary young person's perspective on a film that I grew up really loving and being inspired by when I was a kid. So let's start right there. There's a lot to talk about in this film. I just want to say one quick thing. Is I almost feel like I want to, I've made up a genre for this film and films like this for me in my own mind. And the genre is films that punch way above their weight.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I love films that have no right being good.
Yeah, they've got no business,
no business being good, but they are. Yeah. And I feel like this film completely falls into that category. But let's hear about your experience watching this film.
Well, first of all, just to kind of comment on punching above the weight and stuff, that it's a very, I would say, inspiring film in a way, that this is the debut film of a guy. He was 24 when he made it. He was younger than the leads.
Yeah. And almost all the main leads are almost all unknowns. Yeah.
And it's not by any means, again, we'll get into this more when we talk about kind of the direction of it, but it's not flashy. It's not, it's just really, really well crafted and tightly made, and just very smooth in a way. And I know that it didn't, do a huge numbers at the box office. It's more of a cult classic. I actually hadn't really heard of this until you had mentioned it to me a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we're doing it in an episode, but I think what's great about it is it doesn't, it's a very simple story. It's a really simply directed, just all around simple film.
Yeah.
But it proves that movies like that you don't have to write some magnum opus complex thing to kind of have an impact. And it's still very impactful. It's still, everything in it works really well. The actors all work off of each other really well. The tone of it, there's never any tonal inconsistencies, which can be something that's, surprisingly difficult to nail, is tone and film, and making sure that, even though this movie does have some relatively not serious moments in terms of you're scared or you're sad or anything like that, but there's definitely these
there are
more kind of
moments,
adult moments. Yeah. There's these bits in there but it never feels out of place. It's never you're never sitting there going okay, this is now the movie has shifted tones and this
everything feels earned.
Yeah, exactly. And
so how did you feel? I'm just curious, to even get a little more personal before we start kind of dissecting the film and talking about, different people who worked on it and different aspects of it. I mean, just as an audience, just as an audience member, what was your experience watching this film?
I was definitely up front. I knew nothing about it. I hadn't seen a trailer from it. Didn't know what it was about.
No expectations. Yep.
It's actually very not impossible, but it's hard to find a lot about the movie because it is such a cult kind of classic and didn't blow up any, huge, media stuff or whatever.
I think it was theatrically released for like 10 days.
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
pulled out. Yep.
And so I knew nothing, and when I started watching it, it's like the first 10 minutes are very John Hughes kind of Ferris Bueller, like guy's getting ready in the morning, he's late for school, his sister has to come with him, his younger sister.
Yep.
Then
100%.
he picks up his friend who like is very clearly kind of crushing on him, this girl that he picks up from her house, and they're driving to school together, and there's this funny bit where they, he almost crashes the car. And I was kind of sitting there, and it's all well done, but I was sitting there going like, all right, did Clark just put me in front of a regular teen drama,
John
high
Hughes
school movie.
knockoff?
Yeah. And so I was kind of like, what's the catch here? And I knew that you wouldn't just choose some random like teen drama flick. So I was like, what's the catch here? And then as soon as you get it, you just go, oh, okay, I see. And as soon as the main conflict of the plot starts, which doesn't take long, it's about like it's introduced as soon as they get to school. They start planting the seeds of it. And then you also think like, a lot of times in a movie like this, what I was expecting it was that they get to the school and you're talking about this guy who's like, oh, he broke some guy's
what
neck,
a great
he stabbed some
character
guy,
introduction,
he shot
by the way.
yeah, exactly. And my prediction when I was sitting there watching it was like, oh, it's going to turn out the guy gets there and he's completely not that, and then these two are going to become friends and they're going to realize that they're so misunderstood.
That's what you thought was going to happen?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be about like
it.
them kind of getting to like kind of like a Breakfast Club type thing.
Okay, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you expect him to be a big bully, but then they actually
isn't.
They connect on a like really
He's
personal
got a heart,
level.
yeah, like My Bodyguard, which came out in 1980, or like you said,
was
Breakfast
expecting
Club.
that.
Yeah,
and then it just goes with it. It's like, oh, he actually did stab somebody and went to juvie and all this stuff, and it plays up again this idea of like, I think I had messaged you while I was watching it.
Yeah,
I don't use my phone during movies, but I just had to kind of message you to let you know that I was enjoying it. And I basically just like, it's like bringing me right back to high school. Like it felt, which is rare because there's so much stuff that is made about high school and shot in high school, and whether it's TV or movies that are all and like very rarely do you have like a smile on your face because you're kind of sitting there going like, yep, that's exactly what
especially
it's like. That's
this
exactly kind of the feeling that you have when you're in high school.
This is what, 35 years old almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're in Canada, and I know that, culturally there are a lot of similarities between Canada and America, but I do feel like, and we can talk about this a little more later, that, the American high school experience is fairly unique in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't grow up in Canada. I didn't go to high school in Canada, so I can't speak to how different it might be. But I do know, just from having talked to people throughout my life who've grown up in other countries, that and this is part of why a film like this doesn't translate globally. Because there is a pretty unique kind of experience with high school and our public school system in the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me that you related to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. There's definitely a lot of differences between the cultural elements of like high school in the U.S. and Canada. But then I think the major things are all very similar.
Yeah.
Maybe like we don't have like the pep rallies and things like that, and I think there's less of like a school spirit kind of idea, but there still is. I think an American student going to a high school in Canada or vice versa wouldn't feel like a fish out of water.
Right.
I think that the similarities across the board are much greater in number than I think it's. I would assume, and a lot of that is just because of how influenced, of course, Canada is from the U.S.
Yeah.
But be it culturally, media, whatever. But I also think that there is sort of this conglomerate of like North American, maybe to a lesser extent in Mexico, but like Canada, the U.S. just have such similar cultures.
And with the time, with all these years that have passed, I mean that makes my heart smile. I have to say.
Yeah, no, I mean I was sitting there and I was like, everything both from the idea that like a very broad idea that everything in high school is the most important thing in the world on that day, but also just the sense of just like, in senior year, you have so much freedom to do what you want, and all the teachers, and you can kind of get away with just walking around the hallways.
And we've all known all these characters, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly,
I think all of us, all of us either have been affected by, like directly or indirectly, a bully. I mean, everybody has at least one bully experience, right? You at least knew that you're a bully, or you had a friend that was bullied, or you were the bully, or you were bullied at some point point in your like middle school, high school career. I think most people can relate to that. I think like that they did a great job with each of these characters, even those who weren't on the screen for a very long time. I mean, I love that they have like these two guys who are like film fanatics, and they're running around the high school,
yeah, trying to get into UCLA.
Yeah, and they're trying to turn, our lead character Jerry's, tragedy into a film that they're shooting like right in the school. And you've got, the kid in the like and the Boy Scouts beret, like taking bets, and you've got you've got the goth girl, which I don't know what that's turned into now for kids of this era, but I mean just
there's always the goth kids.
Yeah,
I actually a question that's not necessarily super related to the movie, but related to kind of the conversation.
Yeah,
the only thing that I would say is majorly out of the ordinary to me is having like a that sort of convenience store type thing, like a supply store in your high school. Did you have that?
So I did not. So we did not have a school store in my high school. I don't think we might have
the
had
closest
some
we had
kind
to that
of,
was like a cafeteria.
Well,
I was where you could go in and buy food and stuff. But
and now that I think about it, gosh, I almost do feel like, so I don't think we had a big store, but I do feel like there was some sort of kind of commissary, some sort of like
ours. I mean, if we had one, it was built into the library. Like if I wanted to go buy paper or supplies, I could go to the library, and every student had like a credit amount.
There was
buy
something,
but there was no like physical
big store
room that you went into that had shelves and
right.
University, yes, but
but not,
I
don't think we had. Yeah, it's not like there was a place you could go and buy, the mascot T-shirts and all.
Yeah,
this
those were all done just paper orders and stuff like that. With us,
and I don't know if that was manufactured for this film or if maybe on this was a real high school, shot in a real high school in Utah. So I don't know if that
maybe
actually
that just
existed,
is there,
or maybe that whatever. Who knows?
I will say that one connection too to this movie. The school's mascots are the Tigers, and they're playing the Panthers, and there's all these signs all over the place. It's like skin the Panthers, kill the Panthers and stuff. My high school's like team was the Panthers. So
nice.
There you go.
Mine were the Vikings, so no correlation whatsoever. But I mean, so that's awesome to me. And I think it speaks to a lot of great qualities of the film that even all these years later, generation later, even a little bit of cultural difference, that the film translated for you, that it spoke to your high school experience kind of authentically. I think that's awesome. And it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you enjoyed the film.
Oh, I enjoyed it a lot more than not that I expected not to like it, but I had no expectations. I didn't know what to expect at all. So
that cracks me up. I love the fact that you kind of, because I've seen the film, of course. So when I first saw this film, probably, a couple of years after it was released theatrically. I did not see it in the theater. Almost nobody did. So, but I saw it probably, on HBO or cable, on television. And it was one of those things where back then, in those days, you just watched whatever the heck was playing. So I was just, even back then, I was a big film fan. And so I would watch basically whatever the heck I could get my hands on. And so this was probably just came on the TV, and I just started watching it, and I didn't know what to expect either. And holy crap, I was really blown away by it. I had a grin on my face the entire time. Well,
it's a very charming movie. I'd say that's one way to describe it. So just everything is super.
There's an energy about
authentic,
and there's an energy about it. There's the kinetic nature of how it's shot. And I just the economy of the story, it just, and again, like the relatability, I think it all adds up to, and I think that's a great word to use. It's a very charming film. But so this film, I saw it way back when. It stuck in my mind, and then of course, it wasn't until, I don't even think VHS is when this film really kind of found an audience. Although maybe it was starting to build, but I think really it was DVD. When we really had this huge surge in at home,
just accessibility.
And then I think it really took off. It found an audience, and it's done exceptionally well. And then I've been able to revisit it, of course. And now Shout Factory has actually released a few years ago a really wonderful Blu-ray release with director's commentary and some other interviews, and which is I think the best way that you can probably watch this film today. But I'm it's kind of, I don't know if that's happened to you, and maybe you need to add a few years before it really, really happens to you. But it's kind of fun to have a film that you really felt warmly toward when you were young, and then have that.
Oh, I've had that, yeah.
And then, but nobody else, you're like, who in the hell else has ever seen this film?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think it's something that we'll ever do for this, but there was a movie when I was a kid called Magic in the Water.
Okay.
And it was an American movie, but it was shot all in BC, in kind of like north of Vancouver.
Okay.
And starred what's his name? Magic in the Water.
Yeah, I was like, you'll have to look that one up. I'm not familiar with this film.
Mark Harmon. Mark Harmon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mark Harmon. Heck yeah.
So it stars him, and it's kind of like an E.T. rip-off thing.
Rip-off? Okay.
This is a quick
like
side
Mac
note.
and Me. They had a bunch of those rip-offs.
But I used to watch this movie a ton as a kid, and we had the VHS. I probably wore out the VHS tape, and nobody I've ever met, like literally nobody I have ever met has ever seen this movie or heard of it. And I just recently, within the last, I think, 3 or so years, I found it's impossible to find anywhere online, and I found just a version of it on some like streaming site.
Okay.
And I watched it, and I was like, there's actually a lot of really impressive stuff about this. Like it actually is directed really well. It's not a fantastic movie by any means, but like there's like a really, similar to this, where there's just a charm of it, and
it's close to your
heart. So I actually emailed the director, and told him that it was a movie that had a huge impact on me as a kid, and it's like this kind of Amblin knockoff type thing. But I emailed him and told him that I loved it.
I messaged Phil. I sent Phil a note.
Oh, really?
His website.
But did he respond?
Well, I just did it yesterday.
Responded to me.
Yeah, I just did it yesterday. Yeah. So Phil, if you're listening, I sent you a note. Yeah. But basically, and not that I don't require any response, but I just sent a note saying thanks, because it was an inspirational film to me, 3 O'Clock High. I mean, let's kind of, I think and this is interesting. So I didn't know a lot about what we're going to talk about here as far as the background and how this film kind of came to be. I didn't know any of this until like now, basically.
Yeah.
I was super surprised about the heritage of this film. I mean, so right off the bat, we'll kind of start with what I think is extremely interesting. So this film was actually ghost produced by Steven Spielberg and Amblin. And I had no idea, because of course it's, if you look at the credits, it's produced by Spelling, right? Aaron Spelling.
Yes.
And who's of course huge in television. And but apparently, and I'm not, I don't, do you recall, did you get a chance to read like exactly how that came to be? I'm not 100%
No, I'm not sure. It's actually quite difficult to find a lot.
There's some weird
info.
kind of politics and kind of, but basically, Spelling owned the script. He didn't want to give it up, but he kind of handed it off to Amblin and Steven Spielberg. And then the director of this film, Phil Joanou, was a USC student, and had done like a 30-minute student film called Last Chance Dance, that apparently Spielberg, probably as a USC graduate himself, caught a glimpse of somehow, and really liked it and saw potential. And so kind of Phil and Steve developed a relationship, and Steven Spielberg asked Phil to direct a couple. Spielberg used to produce this television show called Amazing Stories.
Yeah.
And so Phil Joanou directed a couple of those, and apparently did a good enough job that Spielberg gave him this script. And apparently Phil kind of declined at first, and then immediately realized that was insane to decline an opportunity to direct a feature
24
film.
Years old.
24 years old, to direct a film, produced by Steven Spielberg and Amblin. And he was like, whoa, what the heck am I thinking?
Yeah.
But, originally his thought was, I don't want to do another one of these John Hughes high school movies, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you thought it was going to be.
Yes.
And
who I love. I mean, no
of course,
shade on John Hughes at all.
Right. But right, you don't want to see kind of a rip off of that, though. You don't want to see that rehashed. Well, and Phil didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
As apparently the script was definitely a lighter, kind of more John Hughes-esque script. originally. Well, so apparently Phil came back, like chased after Spielberg, met him in his office the next morning and was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I changed my mind. I don't know what I was thinking. I was nuts. I do want to direct this. And so he took on the project. He asked Spielberg for the ability to rewrite the script, which again, it's like he's 24 years old. It's like crazy to think that you'd be directing a feature film, your first film
Produced by Spielberg.
Produced by Spielberg. But now you're saying, hey, I want to rewrite it. And it's the first time he would have ever done this, but he did it. Spielberg convinced Universal. Basically whatever Spielberg said went. So Spielberg said, hey, my boy wants to rewrite the script. And so Universal said, okay. So one of the perks of having Steven Spielberg exec produce your film, for sure. But he rewrote it, and I think that's my understanding is that's where a lot more of this kind of darker, kind of black comedy, really the tone of this.
Again, we haven't really touched on this yet, but it feels so much like After Hours.
Which was very much so.
Yeah, and it's directly referenced in that they had mentioned that was kind of what
a big inspiration
him a lot to go for it.
Yeah,
but which I love. I mean, I love After Hours is one of my, I think,
it's a fantastic
arguably
film.
The most underrated Scorsese movie, but I think it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. And
it's very similar. It's
where there's just this constantly forward momentum where the story never stops, but it doesn't feel tiring. It doesn't like wear on you. It just feels like you're constantly just on this adventure almost with this character. And everything keeps going wrong, and it's like every situation somehow compounds and makes the previous one worse.
The stakes just constantly rising. And so good point. Phil Joanou was definitely inspired by After Hours, and I think even stole a couple of things. He also stole some music from Jaws, which you pointed out
in the bug, when they're in the science class watching this bug documentary. There's it's out
when
to
a scorpion eats
it's
a
when
cricket.
it's when they're going out initially on the Orca to go. It's kind of like a cheery, fun little piece that John Williams did.
And he steals a Back to the Future shot too.
Who actually the lead actor of this was the 3D glasses guy, Biff's friend in Back to the Future. So
3D glasses guy, exactly. There's all these connections. I mean, so it's just an extraordinary story to me, and Phil talked about in the commentary and interviews for this film how he had no idea how unique and special this situation was, because he had just been in the industry. He was so young and such a neophyte that he didn't realize how extraordinary it was to have a feature film handed to you by Steven Spielberg, somebody so powerful in the industry, and to be able to do so many things like rewrite the script without a committee.
I think any director would kill for that opportunity. Especially at 24. Yeah.
Any director. I mean, and so it's like so now it's even more inspiring to me, because I'm like, wow, what an amazing story, this kid and this opportunity he got. But and then we have Barry Sonnenfeld is DP on this film. Couple interesting notes there. I mean, of course, Barry has gone on to direct a lot, and we know him from especially in the 90s, like late 90s, he was doing big movies like Men in Black and Wild Wild West, and that kind of stuff. But before this, he'd worked with the Coen brothers as a cinematographer and had done Blood Simple, which I think is a really well shot film, Raising Arizona. And then he did Miller's Crossing with Coens after this film in the 90s. But, what an extraordinary DP to have on your film as a first-time 24-year-old director.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the movie looks great.
The movie, and I think that's probably one of the things that jumped out to me most as a kid, this was probably one of the first films that I saw that had a lot of this kind of kinetic energy and had a lot of these kind of moves with the camera. I mean, I don't think I had seen, like ramped crane shots and
pull down
and all, and rotating cameras, and, we start on a bird's eye over a character, and we come down and twist at the same time, and
the extreme close-ups on the clocks or the lock or like that. I honestly, I would be interested to hear if someone like Edgar Wright was inspired by this movie, because there's a lot of that. You think of like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, how he does those really quick kinetic edit sequence, like almost like those montages where it's like everything is a close-up, and you're hearing that really raw, sound mix and stuff like that. And it's very similar to this. So I wonder if that's just coincidence or if this is something that he'd seen. Because even at this time, there's a lot of inventive, as much as it is very much, clearly inspired by Scorsese and things like that, and Westerns. There's a lot of really creative, inventive, like original stuff in here. And he is not showing off. It's not something that is like really, and I know that we kind of wanted to get into this as well. And I want to preface it first by saying that I am a massive PTA fan. I love Paul Thomas Anderson.
You're like,
I know that you can say one thing on the internet and then suddenly everyone, there's going to be an article tomorrow that I want to like kill him or something.
Disclaimer.
But I like the movies that I am out to criticize. I enjoy Magnolia and I enjoy Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
But what I find so if you watch PTA's first few movies, starting with Hard Eight, clearly a lot more studio interference. It was before he kind of had proven himself as like a big shot. And I actually kind of am of the rare opinion, I guess, that I prefer Hard Eight to Boogie Nights and Magnolia, because I think that studio interference restrained him, and I think that his restraint there and the restraint that was kind of forced onto him made it a more effective, more cohesive, directional kind of debut, I guess you could say. Whereas you get into Boogie Nights, which again, I really enjoy Boogie Nights. I think it's a great movie. But that's when he starts, you start seeing him do like so many scenes are oneers, and there's this crazy camera movement, and it gets to, I think, to its peak in Magnolia, where there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, like kind of show-offish camera movement, where you can just kind of feel a young director, trying to prove that he can do these really complicated camera moves, and they're very intricate and they have to be very precise with timing and character, and okay, what's the blocking like, and everything is kind of doing this big dance, which is really impressive, really great. I love PTA, but I've always found it a little bit distracting, and I found that the later PTA, like especially in Phantom Thread, and it kind of started in There Will Be Blood, but Phantom Thread, I think, is one of my favorite PTAs, if not my favorite of his, where it's this restraint. It's this every single camera movement is justified, and you can feel, why it's happening. It's not show-offish. It's simple, and it's elegant, and it's, again, restrained. It's kind of the same principle as like an actor bawling their eyes out can be really, really boring, but an actor on the verge of tears can be much more intense. Like an actor that knows how to control their emotions so that they're about to cry. They feel like they're on the burst of that. Or an actor, rather than sprinting down a road, an actor speed walk, like when you can't run, but you've got to like quickly walk somewhere, and there's this quick walk. That can sometimes, that restraint on any big kind of moment in a movie can sometimes make those moments that much more intense and suspenseful, and just all around. That's just kind of what I prefer. Of course, this is all just personal opinion, and I find that this movie does that incredibly well. That every time that there's a more complicated move of the camera or something like that, that it's not distracting. It doesn't feel like the director's sitting there going, "I want to do this because I want somebody to watch this and go, whoa, that's a crazy camera move." It always feels like, as the set pieces get wilder and wilder, as the tension builds and the stakes rise and the day just gets worse and worse for Jerry, that the camera movement and the kineticism of that is building along with it because of what's happening. And it never feels like he's just showing off or trying to prove that he can do crazy things with the camera and stuff like that. Again, big fan of PTA. Love those two movies, but that's just something that I've found that is a really neat kind of comparison between the two of them, because I find that this movie is very restrained. It's very mature, for lack of a better term. For a 24-year-old director, it feels very mature.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you'd say that. I mean, I hear what you're saying for sure, and I tend to agree with you in general about your restraint versus showing off or pushing. And certainly those criticisms have been kind of levied at Boogie Nights and Magnolia, especially Magnolia. And I think I've even heard PTA himself talk about how he thought that I could have maybe used a little restraint on that film in hindsight, as he's aged. But it's interesting to kind of explore why you feel like that works in this film and why you feel like maybe it was a distraction in the others. To me, in my mind, I never had, I like Boogie Nights. I like Magnolia, and I kind of like sometimes it's like technical, virtuosity, if you will. It is not usually a distraction to me, because I feel like those movies are kind of, especially Magnolia, it's a very kind of operatic, dramatic, heightened, almost fantasy film, quite frankly. And so I feel like that camera work kind of pushes that film in that direction, and it's okay. This film, I feel like it really works because it's, from a story perspective, you're in high school. We've already talked about this, where at that age, things are so heightened, so dramatic, so emotional. Certainly this situation, you can imagine how this would just be absolutely like just the height of terror, for our character. And these, all of these scenes are so heightened, and so I feel like the camera work here really lends itself to that. If I imagine some of these scenes without the more complex camera movements, and we had, a heavier camera, a more stable camera, I can imagine this. If this were just shot on sticks with maybe occasional dolly shots, it would take so much of that energy out. It would take so much of that driving rhythm.
And that's what I mean about this one, is that it all feels justified.
Yeah.
That everything that the camera, not that Magnolia and Boogie Nights are not justified in any way, but I just found that it was very, very surprising to hear how young this director was.
Yeah.
That he seemed to have like this very refined sense of style in terms of the way that he used the camera and just set up these especially the points where the camera is doing more complex things, like you said, the scenes that start in overhead and come down to kind of have like a double shot of two people talking to each other. Even the moment when Chad, that's his name, right? Chad is punched in the face and he falls into the bookshelves, and all the bookshelves topple over. And
I think it's Greg,
or it's Greg, or something like that.
The hired
the football quarterback,
the football
guy.
Player. Yeah.
And you've got all the things toppling over, and then it just lands on them at the end. Craig,
Mike
yes.
Jolly as Craig Matty. That's who the character is.
And the camera just is panning very, very simply, panning with all of the bookshelves falling over, and it goes on for like a comedically long time. And then you just have it land right on the end, and they're just standing there behind the final bookshelf that's fallen over. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting, it's interesting to note. So, again, it's my understanding that the director, Joanou, actually shot listed the entire thing himself, even storyboarded a great deal. And even further, he actually shot, so all of the final climactic fight scenes. The DP, Barry Sonnenfeld, was actually sick and wasn't even on location, wasn't even there for 5 days of the shoot. And I think they had, I think maybe he said that this was a 30-day shoot. So for 5 days of that, he wasn't even there. So I think it's very fair to give credit to Phil for the look, the visual aesthetic of this film.
Definitely.
Certainly not to take away from Barry. Very, very obviously a very talented DP, and I'm sure he had a significant impact in things in the look as well. But I mean, definitely the director had a major, major, major voice in the look of the film. I think, rhythm we talk about, I think one of the things that this film is a really great example of are the components, all of these components coming together, dialogue, how the camera is used, of course, the editing. I think there's a really wonderful rhythm to this film that as soon as this film starts, the rhythm just it's just beautifully maintained. It's got a nice dynamic. It speeds up in places, it slows down in places, but it's always kind of consistently building. This film is a really fantastic example of exceptional rhythm in a film. Yeah, definitely. In my mind.
Oh, totally. It's got again, beyond just the kinetic energy of the camera work, it's got such a. There's just this the way that this is edited, and it's not edited by Thelma Schoonmaker, but it could be. It could be. I think actually I'm not sure who edited it. Let me look that up real quick.
But the editor, editing is credited to Joanne Fogel.
Okay.
I am not familiar with this editor.
Yeah, me neither.
but Joanne Fogel is
And that's Joanne, which is interesting. It's Joanne Fogel, not like Joanne the name, but Joe the name, then Anne the middle name, Fogel.
Well, I can't speak to that. I don't anything like I said. I don't know who this. I think it
not a ton, like nothing super well known.
Well, this person did a fantastic job on this film.
Yeah.
So there,
Yeah.
I could say that for sure. Really quite wonderful.
Yeah,
You know,
and she's directed a lot of TV, like
television.
CSI, Law and Order, things like that. But
Doogie,
yeah, definitely
Doogie Howser.
exactly.
Actually,
Doogie Howser.
wow, yeah. So she worked a lot in
there's
television.
a lot of really great, like, just the simple, like, I think editing is such a, again, as I'm not the first person to say this, but it's the final stage of writing, and I think that is ever, like, it's never calling attention to itself. You never feel like there's like super chaotic editing that drives, you kind of insane or distracts you or something like that. It's all very, very intricately placed, and there are some really kinetic edits. There's moments where things are kind of going a little bit crazy, but it all fits. Like, everything fits. Technically, there's not a ton to criticize about this movie when it comes to technicalities. Like, it's all done really, really, really well.
Yep, everything really fits together well. Something else I want to shift to a little bit here, because I think it's, again, it's kind of one of those films that's like, it's better than it should be. It punches above its weight class.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the actors, there's some really, really interesting people here. I mean,
Yes.
I think, like, first of all, I think Casey as Jerry is like the perfect everyman. I think there's like this perfect blend of kind of humor, but but he's got these great, I mean, his like seduction scene of his,
my God,
of his
that's so good.
language arts teacher. I mean, there's just, and he does a perfect job of because I remember being a kid, and I went through a couple of years where I was bullied. And that's probably about the time that I saw this film. And oh my God, could I relate to Jerry Mitchell? Like, I just felt like I was this kid,
No, it's really, really, he does such a great role. What's his name? Who plays the bully?
So Richard Tyson.
Richard Tyson.
So Richard Tyson
reminds me of a young Patrick Swayze. Like, he reminds me so much of Patrick Swayze in The Outsiders.
It's so interesting.
It's like I was just, that it has a very, very mysterious air about him and stuff like that. Yeah,
I think I think that he brings a great presence to the film. I know they spent a lot of time casting. A lot of the the leads are unknown. So I know Casey. How do you pronounce? Is it Simasco? I know that he did
Simasco. I think
he did some work before this, and he might have had the most experience of the leads.
Yeah, he'd been in Back to the Future, and
Richard Tyson hadn't done much, and Ryan, Stacy Glick. I mean, all of these, kind of the kids were
it's
unknown.
Paul Feig's first little cameo.
And he's got a little cameo. But then we've got these guys, like Jeffrey Tambor is like this student store kind of,
but he's great in it, because he takes it so seriously.
He's
and
like
Philip Baker Hall. I was another thing I messaged you during this, that I was
Yep.
like, I see where they got Philip Baker Hall's Seinfeld character.
Yeah.
Because he's just playing this like tough cop that's taking his little high school job
so seriously.
And it's just
John
that funny
P.
role
Ryan.
in the when he's the librarian cop, and in Seinfeld it's like very similar. But yeah, John P. Ryan.
Yep, and he's great. There's just a ton of
gets punched in the face right at the end.
Almost everybody gets punched in the face in the end. Let's face it, right?
Yeah.
But great performances. And I do have a fun little story about Richard Tyson. So, like I said, I mean, I grew up with this film. It's kind of a part of my own mythology, as inspired me to be a filmmaker. I connected to it. And so it's like been kind of seared into my brain, right? These characters in this story. So fast forward, this is probably now maybe a decade ago. I was living in Los Angeles, and I was actively pursuing a career as an actor. I was interning for Sovereign Talent, which is a theatrical agency. I think they did commercial stuff too, but they were theatrical and commercial agent, like a boutique agent, but definitely a reputable one in Los Angeles. And I would intern there. I think I spent, like an afternoon every week or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like help with submissions and read scripts and kind of give notes for the agents and, all this kind of stuff, right? And just, mail out submissions for their actors. And we're still like in this crossover era of like, there were still physical resumes and headshots, 8x10s, but then we were also shifting to submitting electronically. So,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of
Kind of the
all this
interim
stuff,
period.
all this crap going on, right? Well, so I didn't even know, but Richard Tyson was repped by them at the time. So I'm just doing my thing. I'm like busy busy like filing papers or whatever the heck I'm doing. And somebody walks into the office and I look up and it's freaking Richard Tyson standing right there. And it caught me so off guard because in my mind, all I could think was like Buddy Revell.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's hilarious.
And I swear, dude, like inside me, like I somehow regressed it instantly to like a middle school like kid.
You didn't want to touch him.
I was Jerry Mitchell, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't remember like verbatim, but it was something like, where it's like you just completely saying the wrong things because you're so anxious. So I like tripped over my word. Like he actually came to me to ask me for something like, and it was probably something like, hey, is, agent blah, blah, blah here, and I completely like stumbled over my words. And I just remember him just like staring at me like, what in the hell are you doing, dude? What is wrong with you? And
That's hilarious.
I swear to you, he had the same demeanor. He had that same look. It was like so intimidating. And then afterwards, of course, I was just like, oh my God, you're such an idiot, Clark. Like, what is wrong with you? I mean, I could have done or said any number of things. I could have thanked him for his performance. I could have told him how much the film meant to me. I could have, hell, I probably could have gotten his autograph or something if I'd played my cards right. But instead I just like turned into Jerry Mitchell in this film. But
Well, I mean, hey, you got a great story out of it.
yeah, it's a testament to his performance, right? But I swear,
Yeah.
I mean, looking at him, I don't even, I don't even remember him being particularly tall, but he was just such an intimidating presence. I was like, and of course, all of my baggage and history with this story and this character. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, there's my little like brush with Richard Tyson
That's
from
funny,
this
yeah,
film. Yeah. So, but oh my gosh, yeah. Let's just say he's good at intimidation.
Yeah. He played the role.
He played the role. So
He was good casting.
yeah, but there's so much good casting.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
And,
Again,
and-
it's
oh,
like
I
and
love
everything
that you.
takes it like Jeffrey Tambor takes his role so seriously, and it's great. And
Yep.
and it's I think what's really again sort of shocking, but also very inspiring about it is the fact that again you have this 24-year-old director who is getting these great performances out of these people who are well above his age and well above his
Yeah.
weight in a talent
And
and
so much
resume
more
sense.
experience in many
Yeah.
cases. I mean,
And,
it's like Philip Baker Hall had been acting, like 1.5 times longer than he had been alive, at
yes.
this point,
Yeah.
But so had John P. Ryan. And I love these little Easter eggs, like Yeardley Smith is like in the beginning, and at the very end, she kind of bookends the whole film. And, she is kind of like, just like these little tiny things. Like when I was a kid, there was another
Yeah.
film that I really loved called The Legend of Billie Jean, which is a 1985 film. She has a much larger role. She's one of the leads in that. And so if you were kind of like a kid in the 80s, just these little Easter eggs, were just kind of fun. Another thing too, we don't spend as much time often talking about music as we do like visual aspects and, performance. But wow, I mean, I really feel like, at least for me personally, and again, maybe this is kind of like having grown up in the 80s, but to have Tangerine Dream
Yes.
score your film, I think
That's a great score.
it's an
all- yeah.
amazing score, and I feel like it really it does a couple things. It definitely like places this film in the 80s, right? Even more than it already is. It really does kind of place this film in the 80s, but I think it's awesome though. It does it in a way that almost makes it timeless instead of
Well, it reminds me so much of like Wang Chung scoring To Live and Die in L.A.,
yeah.
where that is also a very 80s score, but it's like this like incredibly brilliant score that it works so well, and like you said, it makes it kind of timeless, even though that it is
Even
a
though it's
very
like super
80s
timely.
sounding score. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like when you do something well, maybe that's what makes it like maybe it's a staple as opposed to a cliche almost.
And Tangerine Dream was the best. I mean,
Yeah.
at this time, I mean, Tangerine Dream, and I think they even called back to it. When did Risky Business come out? Do you remember when Risky Business?
1984?
Okay, so it was a couple
think.
years before this, right?
Might be actually Risky Business 83.
So
Yeah, so 4 years before this.
They even kind of like reference, I think there's a scene here where there's
When he's with the microwave.
Well, there's a couple. There's with the teacher he's doing his book report, and we kind of have like a very reminiscent of like the Love on a Real Train, the Tangerine Dream song from Risky Business. It was kind of a callback to that, but so many films.
But when at the beginning when he's doing he kind of slides in over to the microwave to turn it on or turn it off or something. And
that's kind of a Risky Business. That's a visual,
Yes, visually, yes,
that's visually there. But there's kind of some like music callbacks, but they were huge. They did, Risky Business. They did, almost like it seems like I feel like every like amazing movie of that era I'm trying to find, but they did Near Dark.
Near Dark. I love Near Dark.
Like
Sorcerer.
right after this. That's Catherine Bigelow. I think that was her first film.
No, it was her second. I actually took a Catherine Bigelow an entire course on Catherine Bigelow in university.
It was her solo debut. I think she
solo
co-directed.
debut. Her previous one had been co-directed with someone who had done a lot of work on David Lynch. I think he's like assistant director or something. But yeah, they did which is great. If you've never seen Near Dark, great movie.
It is a great movie.
Score.
Yep, and so just they elevate the film.
And I was gonna say too. Sorry, I forgot that they did the score for the Grand Theft Auto 5. Which at the beginning of this film, when they're driving to school, I was like, "This sounds so much like Grand Theft Auto 5." Like,
was it the actual?
It's actually Tangerine Dream that did the Grand Theft Auto 5's some of the score for it.
Yeah, some of the.
So I think it's funny that I was like sitting there going, interesting that this sounds so much like Grand Theft Auto 5, and it's because I didn't realize that they had done the score for Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, they've done a ton of things, and Legend. They did Legend. They did. I mean, just a ton of movies. Risky Business, Firestarter, just a lot of these films from the 80s. They just seemed to be almost everywhere. For a few years there in films, and then people kind of copied their style, and it was kind of really pervasive in the 80s. Their kind of sound. But I think it just adds so much to this, and for me, it's such a treat now. Again, it's like almost timeless in its. In its timeliness, it's so 80s, but it's hard to articulate, but it's like so 80s, but it's so like universal. I don't know.
I think just because it's so good that it supersedes the fact that it doesn't get dated. Like it's like one of those things that it's like ABBA.
Well, what it is, I think there's enough time. I think there's enough time is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what I think it is. It's like, probably like a decade. Like if we were talking about this film in the mid 90s, you'd probably be like, oh, what an 80s. Wow.
So 80s,
what a typical 80s film. But now we're sitting here in 2022, which, blows my mind. It's almost like we're talking about, a film from the 50s. It's like so much time has passed.
There is about an equal amount of time between now and the 80s versus the 80s and the 50s.
Yeah,
so.
and there you go. And so I think it's like now we're talking about a film, and this really does blow my mind, and this makes me feel just extremely old, Cullen. That I mean, we're talking about a film that is so old now that it is kind of like, crossed over into timelessness. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel
it's
so
like
old.
I mean it's like even like you think of something like The Matrix, that's like the epitome of like the 90s, that like neo tech kind of edging into the 2000s, the Y2K whatever and all that and technology and but now suddenly all of that kind of that trend, that cyberpunk kind of trend has like reemerged because it's been 20 years and whereas that was like so uncool in like 2010.
Just don't get me started on the latest Matrix movie though.
Oh yeah.
but I do want to talk about before we wrap up. I want to talk about something else we don't often talk about, or sometimes we do, about these films. I want to talk about kind of the reception, the
Yes, yeah,
commercial response to this film, or rather, shall I say, the lack thereof, because I think
yeah.
there's an interesting story maybe for people who are thinking about getting into the industry, or maybe you're struggling in the industry, or no matter where you're at. If you kind of are an aspiring filmmaker, or you are a filmmaker, I think there's some interesting things here. I mean, so we've talked about all of these different aspects that we think are really admirable in this film, and I think we both are in agreement that the film is a really well made film and deserves to be seen by people. I
Hmm.
think it is a film that is absolutely positively on every level better than average, and in some ways is exceptional, and it
Yeah,
deserves to be seen.
yeah.
But sadly, it wasn't. And I think it's an interesting example of and my understanding was that basically what it came down to was that the Universal's marketing department didn't quite know what to do with the film. Now, who knows,
Hmm.
there may be other political or economic issues that drove this, but the story about the film is kind of that, because it did have a darker kind of tone, although of course we look at it today from 2022 and it really does not seem
No,
very
it's not
dark
dark.
at
Yeah,
all.
in the
But I
slightest.
think
Yeah.
if you put it in context of 16 Candles or something like that, Ferris
Yeah, Ferris
Bueller,
Bueller. Yeah,
yeah, you would. There is definitely, this is darker film,
there's more
um,
violent, like raw violence kind of thing. And
and
yeah,
it's a little esoteric. It's a
yeah.
little eccentric, right?
Hmm.
For some of the reasons we talked about, the characters are a little more offbeat. The technical aspects, the camera work is a little more offbeat. Kind
Hmm.
of adds up to just a little bit of a funkier flick. And apparently, the marketing department at Universal just didn't quite know what to do, so they didn't advertise it. Apparently, it only received newspaper advertising about the
Hmm.
day before it
Wow.
opened. They only opened it in 700 theaters, and then they closed it after about
Like
10 days,
10 days, you
2
said. Yeah.
weeks. Yeah. So it's. I think there's like maybe there's a lot of different ways you could maybe look at it, but in my mind, I think it's a reminder of something that's important to kind of keep in your mind. you know, this guy did everything right in a
Hmm.
sense. He made a really good film. I mean, everybody involved, not just the director, of course, it's collaborative art. Everybody worked really hard and made a really great film. And in the end, it wasn't successful. It didn't find the audience that it deserved to find.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's just a reminder of that, you can't control everything. There are so many aspects to really broad commercial success that boil down to luck, or boil down to things that are outside of your control,
Yeah.
that you can't beat yourself up. It's just ultimately there are so many factors that are outside of your control.
Hmm.
And this guy had luck that most of us would
We'll
never
never
ever
see.
see.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, who gets to make a film? Your first film at 24, Steven Spielberg's producing. Obviously that doesn't happen very
And
often.
well, and that's very much what I meant when I said that it's very like it's an inspiring movie in that
Yeah.
sense that I of course you're your own worst critic, but in terms of like Daylight again, what I just made, it's like I look at it and I kind of think like, oh, it doesn't really do much. It's like there's nothing that's like taking risks or anything like
Mm,
that. But then I see something like this and it's like, oh, this is such a simple story told so confidently.
yeah.
And that's all that really matters, is just that you go with what the story, this
And you
purpose that the story serves.
and
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 yeah,
don't take your success or your failure too seriously,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
so many things outside of your control in the universe that can influence that you have to do it because you love it, and you have to
Hmm.
and just keep on keeping on. And because it's interesting to imagine what would have happened to Phil Joanou if this film would have received a significant push, if it
Hmm.
would have been more broadly played in theaters. God,
And
who knows?
I don't know if you've seen any of his other work, but I'm actually very curious to see his other films now. Not that like none of them were big,
Yep.
but I'm actually quite curious to see if
I
what was
am
his next
too.
stuff like, because
I think the
you know.
Yeah, the only film that I think I've ever seen of his was State of Grace. That's the
Okay.
only other film that I've seen, and I remember thinking pretty fondly on that film, actually.
Hmm.
But it's been quite a while since I've seen it. I think that came out in like early 90s, like maybe 90 or something. And I saw that probably because of Sean Penn. Gary Oldman's in it too. I mean, there's a great cast. Ed Harris is in that. I think Robin Wright, John Turturro. There's a really extraordinary cast in that film. So maybe that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe I'll check that out again. But yeah, yeah, I'd be interested too. We'll have to like. I'm curious to see how his other films kind of compare to this one. But what a strong debut directorial debut feature film, huh? I'm glad you enjoyed it, Cullen. And for everybody else out there, I hope that you enjoyed our discussion of it. If you haven't seen the film, go see it. Obviously, we
It's
recommend
available
it.
on YouTube, like not for free, but you can pay a few bucks for it and
There you
stream it right
go.
on YouTube.
Or, I mean, I would recommend watching it. Go get the Shout.
Yeah.
Go get the Shout Blu-ray. It's a really good looking.
Very
disc.
rewatchable. I've only seen it once, but I can already tell that like it's something that I would want to rewatch more again and again.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, Cullen, as always, it's been a treat. I always love discussing films with you. I can't wait for the next one. And until then, everybody, take care, be safe. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye bye.